Welcome to Northland Voices. I'm Barbara Riles. U.S. Congressman Chip Cravaack has become a household name since defeating Congressman Jim Oberstar and taking over Minnesota's 8th congressional district. But up until he ran for national office, little was known about this ex-Navy pilot. Leanne Wallace tells us more about this Republican lawmaker.
We did it.
The victory took many Northland voters by surprise. On November 2nd, 2010, Republican Chip Cravaack ousted longtime Congressman Democrat Jim Oberstar.
The voters have spoken. A hard contest is now behind us.
We need jobs. We can't wait.
But an even harder first year in office lay ahead for the newly elected congressman.
The frustration levels, the anxiety of keeping the government running, it has been a constant budget battle ever since I've been in the Congress.
As Congress struggles to overcome gridlock after gridlock, the freshman Republican stance remains the same. Jobs are best created by the private sector, not the government.
Jobs are created from the government by taxing the American people. And that's unsustainable because you keep on bleeding out the private sector, they're not going to have any more money.
That lack of solution has people across the nation pointing fingers. Asking why you aren't raising taxes. This meeting came about in Duluth after a group of constituents became very vocal, saying they felt Representative Cravaack was avoiding the biggest city in his district. The congressman had held town hall meetings in several smaller locations earlier in the year.
Yeah, I went to Grand Portage because, you know, they're just as important as any place else in this district. And when, you know, it was really great to go up and talk to those people because they're telling us we've never seen a congressman up here before.
Another issue that raised the ire of some in the district was the fact that his family moved to New Hampshire mid-year.
My wife was transferred out to the East Coast. We picked New Hampshire. It actually has really taken a lot of stress off of me and my wife because now she's not traveling as much. She's home officing and she's being able to take care of our kids too.
Representative Cravaack says he divides his time among his family in New Hampshire, his office in Washington, and his district.
I call it the land of timber, taconite, and tourism. We could be an unbelievably wealthy district in the 8th District if we get government out of the way.
Getting government out of the way has been Congressman Cravaack's mantra since he took office. In Duluth, Leanne Wallace, the Northlands News Center.
3 Democrats have stepped up to challenge Representative Cravaack in next year's election, including Jeff Anderson, Terrell Clark, and Rick Nolan. Now, Congressman Cravaack has joined us, and we really appreciate, I know you're busy, I really appreciate you taking time to come in and talk with us a little bit. So how do you think it's going so far? A year and a little bit in office?
Frustrating. You know, it's frustrating. We work very hard on legislation and trying to get jobs and the economy rolling again. I think we've passed some pretty good legislation. We pass it in the House, we send it over to the Senate, and there it sits. We have 28 bills that are basically sitting up like cordwood with Senator Reid. All we're asking Senator Reid to do is just please put them on the floor, have open and honest debate, and allow the bills to fail or succeed as they see fit.
Senator Reid being basically the gatekeeper?
Yes, he's the gatekeeper. But unfortunately, he's holding back the economy right now because these, again, are jobs bills. You know, something from as simple as a Boiler Mac, which would put our municipalities, our hospitals, our schools, creating millions of dollars in costs and trying to get boilers up to a certain standard. These are going to cost jobs, and this is something we need to overcome, and especially for our paper mills in the 8th District.
We'll talk more specifically about bills in a minute. I want to get kind of a sense of where you're at right now. You're a freshman lawmaker in Washington, D.C. Is it what you expected it to be, or has this gridlock, these gatekeeping situations, has it frustrated you to the point where you feel like you can't get anything done?
Oh, no, I think we can get things done. I always try to find a common ground, a common sense solution to a lot of the issues. And dealing with, you know, on a subcommittee level or committee, you're able to reach across the aisle very easily because you need support from both sides in getting some of your bills passed. And we can talk more about that in the steel bill that we just passed in a subcommittee level. You know, it's on a one-on-one person-to-person issue, we can get things done. But unfortunately, when you get to the higher power brokers, they seem to clash.
Is there a way to break through that? You say this, getting together individually with across the aisle seems to work better than when you get it up to the level where actually it's introduced and you can talk about the bill. So is there a way around that? Have you found a way to circumvent that issue?
Basically, if you have a bill, and some of the bills that we've put forward, what I do and our team does is we reach out to other members of Congress for support of that bill before we even bring it on the floor. Mm-hmm. And that's what we have found to be the best tactic on trying to get a bill through. Making sure that we're addressing the different needs from both sides of the aisle and trying to move a bill forward.
Well, when Leanne mentioned in that story that your wife has moved out of state and
Correct.
So on, you say you've heard a lot about that.
Yeah.
And in fact, you've heard a lot of criticism about that
Right.
and about maybe not being here enough. How do you answer all of these charges? It's got to be coming from the private world into a place where everybody's lambasting you. How do you handle that?
Well, we were very open and honest. When my wife and I made a decision that it was becoming too difficult to take care of our children, my wife is a career woman. She's worked very hard to get where she is today. When she was promoted and transferred, we tried for her to commute on a weekly basis, and taking care of 2 young children, it became impractical. And then when my oldest son, I was in district, my wife was on the East Coast, became injured at home, and I couldn't get home fast enough because the 8th district is very large.
Yes, it is.
And I can be 20 minutes away, or I can be 5.5 hours away. And after that point, we decided not taking care of our family. Family comes first, and this was the best way that we can take care of our children, and also I can support my wife in her career.
Do you sometimes find yourself biting your tongue because you want to say Congressman Oberstar, who was revered by the Democratic Party, did not spend very much time living in his mother's home in Virginia? Or?
Right. I spend about 15 to 16 days a month in district, and I like people to get past the issue of where I live and how they're being represented. I've done 24. Tonight will be our 25th town hall. We've done 14 teletown halls. We've done over 210 mobile offices. We're going out and reaching out in many different ways than other congressmen. Matter of fact, I would compare my record to some of my fellow delegates within the 8th District of Minnesota, within Minnesota. We are out there reaching out to our constituents, and I think we're doing a pretty good job.
What's been the toughest part of your job to this point?
The toughest job is time away from my family. To be honest, the people that are truly sacrificing right now is my wife and kids. But we understand that the reason why I got involved in this is because the country needs to change the direction that it's going. When I explain to my boys the reason why I'm away from them is that I'm serving the country, we talk about the Red Bulls that went over to Iraq, and now they're in Kuwait. And my son, my youngest, in particular, it's toughest for him. My oldest remembers when I was an airline pilot and a Navy reservist, and I was gone a lot. But my youngest, it's new to him. And I ask, when he starts crying, and I say, do you remember when we went up to see? He calls them the real soldiers. I said, do you remember when we went up and saw the real soldiers? And you remember those kids that were, crying when their dads were leaving? I said, those guys haven't come home yet, son. So
it could be worse, honey.
It could be worse. And
so that the travel and the extensive travel in this large district has been the toughest part of your job. What's been the best part of your job?
Being able to create legislation for the 8th district. Being able to create legislation, for example, our TSA bill, and getting our soldiers, our Bulldogs and our Red Bulls, when they come back and they're going through TSA and they're in uniform and they have their ID, to have expedited screening process and be treated like the heroes that they are, instead of having to go through and be in stocking feet and T-shirts when they go through the TSA screening.
All right, well, we need to take a quick break. That's one of the bills that we'll talk about when we come back. We'll talk about Congressman's voting record and how it's been working with legislators on both sides. A little bit of a lighter note. Who do you think makes the better hot dish, U.S. Senator Al Franken or Congressman Chip Cravaack? Their hot dish skills were put to the test recently as part of the 2nd annual Hot Dish Off. Members of Minnesota's congressional legislation put politics aside to whip up their best recipes. Because whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, most Northlanders love a good hot dish. This year, there was a tie. Senator Al Franken and Congressman Chip Cravaack split first-place bragging rights.
But Chip did use some, his monomen or wild rice was from Fond du Lac, which is, of course, near Duluth and obviously in his district. So kudos.
Now, last year, Senator Amy Klobuchar won. I think she called it, the taconite tater tot hot dish. What did you call yours?
Minnesota Wild Strata.
Ah, okay. It sounds wonderful. Of course, I love wild rice, so anything with wild rice has got to be good, right?
That took us over the top for our dish, yep.
So that's kind of a fun thing to do with
Yeah,
both sides of the fence. But it says a lot more. It talks about what you spoke to about working across the aisle and trying to get that legislation, nonpartisan legislation, at least up to where you can talk about it in the House.
Yeah, it's important that we communicate with Senator Klobuchar and Senator Franken, along with Colin Peterson. Colin Peterson and I worked pretty closely together on some bills, and the basic thing is you have to find common sense. You have to find commonalities between all of us so that we can get legislation and move it forward for the betterment of the 8th District of Minnesota, and the country.
One of the common sense pieces of legislation that you fought for and got passed was what you were referring to as the soldiers coming home, not in their T-shirts and stocking feet. And are you happy with that? Do you think that's the best thing right now?
Right. It's using, it keeps in line with a risk-based, intelligence-based type of analysis moving forward. Had the fortune, I'm on Homeland Security, and I was asked to go on a CODEL as the vice chair of aviation and taking a look how Israel does aviation operations. I was able to bring some of that home in regards to risk-based intelligence. We have a finite amount of resources, and we need to concentrate either on known threats or unknown threats. Now, a service member who is in uniform, carrying a military ID that has gone through a process within the district, the various communities, whether it be Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Army, that said this guy's a good guy, he can move forward, should be able to go through expedited screening. It's not that they're not going through any screening. Screening doesn't just take place right at the terminal. It takes place right when you buy the ticket. That's when the screening process actually takes place.
But what they don't do is look through your carry-on luggage, and there must have been questions raised about PTSD and service weapons coming home and so on. And we all know circumstances where returning veterans have used those service weapons for violent means.
Their check-on baggage will still be screened.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll still be screened, but probably won't occur and can occur on a random manner depending upon how the procedures are set in place. Is that it can randomly, a person could go through the full check. It's very similar, actually, in what is done through frequent flyers type of program.
Yep.
So the security is still there.
Okay.
It's risk-based analysis.
All right. Let's talk about your voting record, because you are, I guess, among the Republicans that put you very near the middle of the pack. And you talked about the importance of common sense and talking it through with your brothers and sisters on the other side of the aisle and so on. Is that why you think your voting record's pretty much in the middle of the pack of Republicans?
Well, I'm looking for common sense solutions. What I look for in a bill is if I can come down and sit at your dinner table and explain it to you and say, this is why I voted in this manner. National Journal just came out and did a study on us, and they kind of found out they consider me moderate.
I think they called you, the National Journal called you centrist.
Centrist.
And the most moderate member of the Minnesota GOP delegation. Is that something to be proud of?
Well, it's common sense solutions.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a moniker. I'm just trying to get the job done. Heritage Foundation actually came out and found the same. They called me right of center.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking for common sense solutions. That's all I'm looking for.
So that really, it puts you, I think, you're voting with your party 93% of the time. And that puts you centrist. That's amazing, then, how many other Republicans are voting hardline party politics every single time. Am I right?
Well, that's a Washington Post article. And what they took in effect, instead of key votes, like National Journal did in the Heritage, is they took also into, procedural votes. They also took in common sense votes that everybody's going to vote for, like, naming of a post office or naming something like that. That's where that 94% came in. But the key voting that National Journal picked up on, also the Heritage, put me towards actually just right of center.
Do you think that your party is a little bit too hard line? Do you think that everybody should maybe listen and say, yeah, I'm a freshman, but let's get some common sense in here?
I think that's the whole freshman class, why we went that's why you saw this freshman wave come in, because they're saying, let's get results. Enough of the bickering. Let's get results. And we've seen that on the U.S. House of Representatives sides, but the Senate is a little more entrenched. But because again, we can't even get bills past Senator Reid just to get on the House floor for debate. The freshman class, in particular, wants to see results. We want to see bills that go out to the American people, that create jobs, that get the economy going again. That's why we're here. I mean, that's why we stepped up.
Is there a way you can get past all of this posturing by not only your party, but the Democratic Party as well, and do what the people want, which is to find common ground and get legislation passed?
Well, I think we're listening. I mean, that's why we're here. Again, we're listening to our constituents. We're trying to get these bills passed, and I'm looking forward to Senator Reid's leadership and saying, okay, let's bring these bills to the floor. Let them fail or succeed on their own merits, but at least allow for the debate.
Now you have, we've referenced the fact that you're a freshman lawmaker several times. You've had sort of integration by fire in your first term. Tell me about that, because that's something you've talked a little bit about.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had a reporter come in and we were just chatting, and he said, your freshman class is the most interesting freshman class that I've ever seen here on the Hill. And the reason why they said that is because just a couple weeks after we were sworn in, we had an assassination attempt on a fellow member of Congress.
Terrible, frightening.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
We were told not to do town hall. So they didn't. You just can't do that.
More coffee on the corner with the congressman.
No,
sort of thing.
No, and we can't do that.
Yeah.
That's not what the U.S. House of Representatives. We're out with the people. That's what a representative does.
Yep.
The other thing he said, you're here just a couple months, and the government's already in money.
Yeah.
So he said, usually a freshman gets to come in. He's got about 7 to 8 months to kind of get acclimated. We had trial by fire, and we had to jump in it right away.
Yeah, that's been, you're right. Trial by fire is a good way to look at it. So have you gotten past it? Are you still able to get stuff done? Oh,
absolutely. I've got a great team in Washington. I've got a great team here in the district. I think we passed some pretty good legislation for the people of the 8th District, Minnesota. So we're definitely trying to get the things done. We're trying to make things work and get results.
Let's take a break. You say you've passed some good legislation. So let's talk more specifically about that legislation. Well, Congressman Cravaack was campaigning for his seat. He said that he would make the Polymet project on the Iron Range a priority, and he hoped to have it done during his first term in office. Now, you have met, this week you were at your fourth meeting. On
correct.
The Polymet situation, and where do you think we are at this point?
I think we're doing very well. We're taking
very well is what? Getting it?
Moving forward.
Okay.
This is our fourth meeting. The first meeting was quite contentious, and it was very apparent that the agencies needed to communicate better with one another. That was one of the main things. It was very obvious. And through this process, what we've done is been able to communicate with the various agencies. Today's meeting we scheduled for 2.5 hours. We completed it in an hour.
What is it that you completed? What are you working on with them?
Getting feedback of where we are and what we're going. Now, we've had another little setback with Polymet. The EPA, since our last quarterly meeting, requested that Polymet dig 25 more wells. And these wells would not identify well water, but also air quality.
But let me ask, is that really a setback, or is that important to protect the environment? Because hopefully that's something that you're interested in, as well as the jobs and so on.
Absolutely. It was a setback to the original timeline.
Okay.
So what this is going to do now, it pushes the timeline out a little bit more. I think July will be an internal EIS, and then hopefully we'll have, in the next several months after that, we're going to get, hopefully by October, we'll get the final EIS open for general public. And I work very closely with the Army Corps of Engineers. Colonel Price has been extremely forthcoming on trying to move this project forward. And I think he's doing all the right things. He's trying to dot the I's and cross the T's, because he knows no matter what happens at the end of the day, there's going to be litigation. So we have to make sure that we have a very solid environmental track record. All the different, from Minnesota Pollution Control to Natural Resources to DNR to EPA, we're all on board.
All right, now you sit on the Transportation Committee, and you've been involved with several provisions that impact the Northland. Let's start with the American Steel provision.
Yes, that was one of the provisions I was very proud of. We worked on very very hard in trying to get consensus within the 18-hour marathon committee meeting that we had for the transportation bill.
And that's the use of American steel is mandated for all military weapons, am I correct?
It's all federal projects.
All federal projects.
All federal projects. And what it does is it puts American steel on a level playing field with Chinese subsidized steel. And it gives us, Americans, first dibs on American projects by American workers for an American industry. It's really common sense.
It's all about the money, isn't it? I mean, you keep these jobs here, you keep the money flowing in the economy.
So, absolutely. It's American jobs, and plus the steel that we produce here in the United States is a superior steel.
All right, I want to, because we only have about a minute left, but I want to talk about something. The federal regulations for smaller municipalities is something you've been working on, like the rural county federal mandate relief and truck weight uniformity.
Yes.
In other words, the truck weights were too heavy to go on the highways. They had to go through community streets and so on. You said that was it was not common sense.
It makes no sense. You have a logging truck going through downtown Duluth with kids on their bicycles right by. It's a safety issue. We need to get those logging trucks back on the highways where they belong.
All right, and then let's talk about the money for the tribes.
Yes,
that's another one you've been, the Nelson Act. Yeah.
Right. I worked very closely with Colin Peterson on this one. And what this is the federal government purchased land from the tribes. And this is a distribution of those funds. And it's been held up for 10 years. And we finally got it moving forward.
All right, we are out of time. I have to invite you to come back. There's so many other things we've got to talk about.
Absolutely love to. Thank you.
We need to take a quick break. We'll be back to wrap up this edition of Northland Voices. For this week's Northland Voices, Congressman Cravaack. I mean it. Come back again. Talk to us again. Appreciate having you here. And thank you.